it is a special presentation because it was a teamwork actually completed this past summer. They used 100 files, 2 million words, 2 months and technical text, 30 translators and no highway option. What do you do when you confronted with this kind of environment and tools? Farah, Arjang, and Ida Jones will explore the challenges and successes of putting together large projects from the perspective of both linguist and project manager, explicating the necessity of collegial collaboration between the manager and the managed. Our presenters, Ida Jones, she's a translation project manager. She joined the State Department's Office of Language Service on one sweltering day on early summer 2011. Since she has served as a translator and in quality control before migrating to the project management team, where she has made her home. She brings to bear international experience in technology, teaching, translation, and project management in coordination of translation services for the State Department, White House, and other government agencies. Ida holds a bachelor's in French summa cum laude from SUNY Oswego, and from Birmingham University, a master's in computer science, the advanced certificate in translation, French to English, and a PhD in translation studies. In addition to a love of languages, Ida also enjoys music and dance. Let me introduce Farah Arjang, translator, interpreter. Since 2016, Farah has been serving National Capital Area Translators Association as Vice President, Treasurer, and President. Farah has a Bachelor's of Arts in Translation Interpretation Studies and has been working as a translator and interpreter for more than 3 decades. She brings with her a wealth of experience in translation and interpretation, leadership, management, and industry vision by her direct involvement in working as a full-time translator and interpreter, organizing conferences, training programs, and presenting in different language conventions. Farah's passion for languages and translation dates back to her youth when she was a professional athlete, during which time she began interpreting for sports clinics and serving National Olympic Committee. She is a strong advocate of training and collaboration among language practitioners and academic experts. As such, she co-founded the Confluence Conference. Farah's vision as an NCATA president is to organize year-round activities to expand the organization's membership, provide translation training, encourage healthy discussions about issues facing the translation and interpretation industry. She's also interested in the translation of poetry and literature pieces. So welcome, Ida and Farah, and the time is yours now.
Thank you, Yvonne, for that introduction. And with that, we are going to work our way right into what we have to talk to you about today, which is mega projects and teamwork. And the way it's going to work today is that we are going to have a bit of interactivity. So please use the chat forum. We have chat monitors on hand who are going to curate the chat for us and feed us the questions. We will also be using breakouts, and so please participate in those when you get sent into those. And submit the questions at any time in the chat room. Now just let's do a sound check and make sure you can hear me. How is that? Check, test, check, check.
Sound good?
Hopefully you can hear me well enough, and I will also project. All right, so let's get right into it. This is mega projects and teamwork. We're going to outline for you some project parameters. We're going to highlight some of the challenges, and then we're going to have a hopefully robust discussion and explication of the issues from the translator's perspective, as well as the project manager perspective. And like I said, there'll be the opportunity to share your thoughts and your comments, ask questions, and then we'll have some final thoughts at the end as well. So with that, we have been broaching new and exciting frontiers. As you know, last year in 2020, in spite of everything, Earth was able to send the rover Perseverance to Mars, whose main job was to seek out signs of ancient life, collect rock samples, and that sort of thing. And it landed on February 18 successfully in the Jezero crater. And surprise, surprise, we found intelligent life on Mars. Okay, I'm just kidding. But if we did, we would need to communicate, we would need to collaborate, and we would need to do this now. And this is what gives rise to what I like to call some impossible project parameters, meaning consider that you have about 2 million words spread across 100 files. You've got 2 months to do this. It's highly technical text. And so you're going to need a team of translators, let's say 30. And oh, by the way, there's no highway option. We have to do it. We do not have the choice. We are doing this. Technical content can be things like, if you can imagine, if a sovereign nation is speaking to another sovereign nation, and in this case, a sovereign planet speaking to another planet, we might have to put treaties in place. We would need trade agreements. We would have to discuss zones and borders, extraditions, copyright law, labor law, maybe some other things. Once we start getting into trade, we need to have manuals, we need to have dictionaries, we need to write reports. We have this large volume of words. We have this large number of documents. We have a language of limited diffusion, which is the Martian dialect. And I don't know about you, but how good is your Martian? And so we need to surge resources in that, but there's a scarcity because, again, how many Martian speakers do you know on planet Earth? And also the language direction might be interesting. And as it so happens, Martian goes from bottom to top in a diagonal fashion across the page. Can you imagine having to format that into the tools that we have? And so you can have, pose issues such as in the tables. For instance, working in Word with tables in English is already difficult. Imagine how much worse it can get. Then you have the issue of source text quality. You've got multiple and varied source document formats. You've got your PDFs, which have been scanned, maybe poorly, because remember, we don't know what sort of writing systems. Thankfully, there is a writing system on Mars, and thankfully it can be translated, but what tools are they using to create their documents? So when our client here got the documents, now they had to figure out how to present it in a format that we can use. So you've got your PDFs, which have been converted from known and unknown formats. And then you've got Word. Some of them are native Word documents, but then for some reason, the sections have been formatted differently. Then you have your Word documents that have been reverse engineered from PDFs, which again creates changes across the sections. And then remember that there is no highway option, people. We have to do this. We've been given this, and we are going to be working with it. There's no way out. Yes, I'm serious. We are doing this. And so with that, I'm going to have you speak with Farah now, who's going to talk about things from the translator perspective. And then after that, we'll talk about the project management perspective. And remember, put your questions and your comments in the chat as we go. There'll be a time at the end to talk about it, and also some time in between as well. So with that, Farah, would you take it away?
Thank you, Ida. Thank you for this introduction and a little bit information about the project that we have at hand. And I would like to start my conversation with the polls. If you can run the first poll, please. So my question is, when working on a project, do you use the guidelines provided by the PM? And it would be great if you could just vote. Perfect. Very good. Excellent. So let's go to the next poll. Now, do you okay, we have to go to the next poll, please. Okay, so I just want to know if you can just weigh in and say if you think there's a difference between glossary and terminology. Very good. They are different. Excellent. Let's go to the next. And how much in research is involved in translation? Very good. Excellent. Okay, so shall we go to the next one? And how important is the prior knowledge in the field of the topic that being translated? Okay. And management and meeting small deadlines and a large project. Excellent. So if we go to the next question, that's quite a longer question and answer. So I would like to give more time. And this is important for me to see how you voice your opinion. Okay. I am impressed. All the answers were just what a translator would like to hear, or a project manager also. Perfect. So we are going to just create some breakout rooms and send you to breakout rooms. Jeff, our technical support, is going to give you the questions again for you to discuss. So we'll give you about 8 minutes to discuss in every breakout rooms the same questions. And then there will be a 30 seconds warning before you are back to the floor, and then we will discuss more on these parameters that I just mentioned. So can you send everybody to the breakout rooms, please?
What's the next thing? Assign to. Oops.
Because you know I'm in the meeting about 3 different times.
Yes.
One of them says, the host has opened breakout rooms, please wait to be assigned. And it said that from the beginning, since we started the process.
It doesn't give me that, so I say open all rooms. Is it, what is it showing now?
Nothing yet.
Okay. Rooms wait to be assigned.
Okay, so let's close the rooms and just continue with the bring everybody on the floor. That's fine.
I don't think anyone went anywhere. So if you
Okay.
close it down and relaunch it, Farah, you do it.
I cannot do it. It doesn't allow me, but that's okay. I can just, let's continue with the conversation. Okay. Can we go to the next slide, please?
All right, 1 second.
Perfect. Very good. Okay. So what we want to talk about is the guidelines that in large projects, how important is, as you who wait in the polls said, that most of you refer to the guidelines provided by the project manager. Sometimes the guidelines are too long, and we as translators are given like 30 pages of guidelines. And when you are struggling with meeting the deadlines and reading, researching, browsing through the document and doing a lot of work preparing for the translation, reading the guidelines also can be an additional work. But what I learned it hard way, in fact, is that guidelines are very important. The project manager spends a lot of time to put them together and create a guideline that they want, especially on larger projects when a team of translators are working together. They want the translators follow the guidelines so that the final project as is consistent. For example, they have things to say about formatting, how to deal with tables, styles, and how to set up with Microsoft Word. For example, they might want you to use all across the translation, all font 12, all specific font, like say Calibri, and they want you to start from whatever margins. Those are sometimes very important for the project that you're working with, especially the numbering list system. And they might want to ask you to use a different numbering system that is in the original document. So following the guidelines, I think, is one of the basic, most important aspect of translation for large projects, especially in team work that, like Ida mentioned, if there are 30 translators working together, you definitely want to read the guidelines, even if it is 30 pages. Can we go to the next slide, please? The next important thing is the terminology. As we are working on large projects, we know that we have to develop our terminology based on the project, based on our client, and for a particular industry, for a subject matter. And that helps for the consistency of the final project. And it's especially important when several translators are working on the same document. Imagine if one translator uses one word and the other translator uses another word for the same word in English, then the final translation would sound a mismatch of all sorts of words and very hard for the end user to read and communicate with that translation. So in order to produce the highest level of language, specifically, we're talking about this particular language for the Martians, you had to do a lot of, or translators had to do a lot of work in advance, including the terminology, that saves time for research time for other translators, especially when they are dealing with deadlines and with large projects. So you want to take the technical terms, the spelling, transliteration of the names, and reference for future projects to that's why you want to make a terminology spreadsheet. The next, please. And the research is, I would always browse through the source document, sometimes 100 pages, sometimes 200 pages, but I definitely browse through the whole document, kind of get a sense of the terminology, the overall picture of the project, and try to understand the source and the target system and the concepts in both languages, how they are being expressed in one language as opposed to the other language. For example, if we were working on the legal translation, there might be differences in legal systems of the source and the target language. Can we go to the next, please? And another important thing is the time management and meeting the deadline. When you're working on a 200-page document and you're given, let's say, even 1 month, working and saying, okay, I'm going to work and see what happens, that doesn't work. Even if you divide them equally, it still doesn't work, because from experience, I can tell that the first 3 pages might take me 3 days, but the last 15 pages might take me 5 hours. So it is not an equal division, but I normally set a deadline for me and divide my source document into different sections so that I know if I meet those deadlines, then I can definitely finish the large project on a given time, albeit a month or sometimes even 40 days for one project. And since in this case, for this Martian project, we were building a team in a Flash, it was very important to create a communication device or some sort of communication among the translators so that when they have a question, they could communicate with each other, especially for the terminology, for the guidelines that were given. But sometimes some translators are in a different level. You know, some translators have a lot of experience, some translators less experience, and this communication tool helps the translators to all come to the same level, or at least help each other, especially saving time for research, saving time for finding terms for particular repeated terms in the source document, as well as any question that they might have as they go through the document and translating. And can we go to the next one, please? Somebody is asking about the communication tools. We will talk about it later, but just to give you a short answer is, for example, have a let's make a WhatsApp group. In that WhatsApp group, only the translators who are working on that particular project can be part of that WhatsApp group, or also a Google group. In this case, for example, we could make a Google Doc that everybody could put their questions there, and either one of the senior translators or the project manager could answer the question. And the prior knowledge, as we discussed, is very important, as you all mentioned in your polls, that having prior knowledge helps to speed the translation, to be more precise, and also be helpful to each other, especially if there are some translators in the group who are not as experienced will help a lot. And also having a skill set is very important to know Microsoft Word at an expert level, because after all, translators are wordsmiths that they need to know how to create a document on Word, Excel, PowerPoint. I think these three are very important, and I cannot talk enough about the importance of translation memory programs, in this case, SDL Studio, even though a lot of the documents, as Ida mentioned, were copies of PDFs and all sorts of hodgepodge of different formats, SDL still could help a lot, because there were some tables that were with font 1.
So everyone, thank you for bearing with us. And this is conferences in the time of COVID. This is how we do. All right. So first thing we're going to do is also look at some questions. Then we're going to try to get into the breakout rooms again. And then we'll come back and discuss. So first question I have is, when confronted with a situation such as this, what is the first thing that comes to mind? Answer with a single word, and you can put that directly in the chat. Yes, no, maybe. Everyone, I see one reply. All right, think about that. Then, this one is a poll. So if we can run the next one, the poll now, Jeff, that you have, we can go ahead and do this one as an actual poll. Take a few seconds. All right. Okay. So I'm seeing here that most people would recruit a team of project managers, and some might go it alone, and some might have a team of project managers who are also co-leads. All right, good. Now keep these two questions in mind, as well as these other questions that I'm showing you here. Think about these as your focal points as you go into the breakouts. And hopefully we're going to be able to also post the questions and these last two as well in the chat room, in the breakout room, so you can see it. You'll be in there for about 8 minutes. Have a chat about it, and then we'll come back and we'll talk about, I'll give you some of my ideas. You can also share some of yours in the chat, and we'll go from there. All right, so with that, let us see if I can do it from here myself. I'll try. Okay, if you can enable the breakouts, Jeff, and if you can launch them. And
yeah, it's open.
Yes, they're open.
How much more time, Ida?
And talk a little bit about some of the things we might have discussed. So welcome back. Thank you for participating. I was popping into the rooms, and in each one I heard the discussion in progress. So I hope that the setup and that the questions were able to spur a bit of discussion. And so feel free to put questions in the chat as we go, and I will try to answer them as I'm working here. And then also, like I said, we have some time at the end to talk a little bit as well. So, and Farah, if you can keep an eye on the chat and see when questions are coming up.
I will.
And if I'm not answering something, or if you can point it out to me, because it may or may not pop up on my screen here. All right, so craziness, yes? Sometimes we're confronted with these situations that you wonder, how are you ever going to make it through? And the first thing you might get to is the surging of the resources and building the team. Because like I said, if you have a language of limited diffusion, such as is Martian, you might have a bit of trouble uncovering resources in that language combination. But then, on top of that, you have to build a large team. So things you can do is, first of all, turn over every stone, look under every nook and cranny in your own organization and see if you have folks that maybe you haven't used in a long time, and you can reactivate them, see if they're still in the business, see if they want to come back on board, get them reactivated. Then, like with anything, you can start conferring with colleagues and find out who they work with. And they can give you leads on folks that you can approach and recruit. And just like, I think sometimes in the translating industry, we might think that recruiting is harder than it has to be, because we always have that testing component that we want to do. But think about any job in the real world as well, where you would get somebody, you'd examine their credentials, you'd examine their references, you might get samples from them. This is the same thing you can do if you have to surge resources and you have to do it in a hurry.
Ida, if I may interject, some people are saying that you need to speak up a little bit more. So can you get closer to the microphone or speak a little bit up? Thank you.
Let's see here. I'll bring it a little closer. What is happening? Are you having an echo?
No, that's good. I think your volume is a little low. So it's good now when you talk with your all fire that you're always firing the translators to work with the same fire.
Testing, is that a little better? Is that the same? All right, you let me know. Just keep
letting me know. Come a little bit closer still, closer to your mic.
Okay. All right, so I'll project some more. So the other thing you might want to do, I would highly recommend, okay, great, thank you, is that you have a kickoff and training workshop. And in that, you can outline the parameters, you can explain how it's going to work. Folks can have a chance to interact with each other. You can do a little bit of training, whether that be training on some tool that you're going to use, or training in terms of how you want to all align your formatting, but have some sort of kickoff workshop, some sort of training session that you will do once you've brought your entire team together. And this way, you can get everyone on the same page from the beginning. Then you have to think about team morale as you're going through this project, because imagine it's going to be many sleepless nights. People are going to be cranky. They're going to be on a short fuse. They're going to be tired. They're going to be anxious, because we all want to do a good job. And so I find that it's useful to use a little humor. And since we're all lovers of words, a clever turn of phrase is also helpful in lifting the spirits of the team. And I'm not above also using clips of music, be it contemporary music or rock music, or something that gives the message that I'm trying to get across. So for instance, at the end of a project such as this, or as we turn for the home straight away to get in, I might send a clip of Final Countdown, if you know, it's Final Countdown.
And I attest to that. This was such a great boost of energy when Ida sent this final countdown. It was just with 3 nights of not sleeping to meet the deadline. This was just to this day I remember as like great thing happened those days.
I mean, I just try things that I know work for me. It may not work for everyone, but music and that sort of thing it lifts me. And so I figure maybe it works for someone, and if it does, good. And if not, poubelle, throw it away. You don't worry with it. Yes? Communication, some of you said, yes, of course, is very key in this process. Communication with the client, with your PM team if you build one, and I highly recommend that you do so. If I have to do something like this, I am going to get me a team of project managers, and I can either be the lead PM that then steers all the other PMs, or they can be autonomous co-leads, whichever model is going to work for the group that I have. And that's another thing you need to check with. What's the personality types of the other people? Probably we're all leader types because we're project managers. So you might want a team of co-leads. But then you still might need to have oversight over everything since you are the lead on the project. And with your translation team, you have to set up a way of communicating with them, managing conflicts. Documentation is another good way to get communication out. So you would have a batch of documents that go with the project, such as the guidelines for your organization. How do we do things? Then you want maybe transliteration guidelines. I think we will want that for a language such as Martian. We want to all be transliterating the names in the same way. You might have style sheets. You might put together guidance on where they can get resources. And all these things help to have everyone on the same page, have us all communicating, and have us all working together towards the same goal. You may also want to have an area where questions and answers will be, a forum for questions and answers where they'll be documented and everyone has access to it. I find that, for instance, Google Documents or Google Sheets is a good place to have that. So they'll post a question, whoever knows the answer can answer, you moderate it, you check it. If it's something you need to answer, you address it. If something comes to you in email, you copy paste it there so that there's a central repository where folks can go to for reference for questions asked and answered and to pose new ones. Managing your client's expectation is going to be a very key part of this as well, because often in projects, clients will come back to you with something else that might be nice to have, which maybe was not something you discussed at the onset. And in a project as large as this, that can derail everything quickly. If it's a smaller project, you might be able to flex readily and accommodate that because it's just a matter of crossing a T this way instead of that way, or some other thing. But when they want to make major changes to the scope, or even little changes to the scope in such a large project, it has a tendency to disrupt things. So what I like to do when they are insisting is I say, you may have this, or you may have this. You may not have both, because until I learn to manipulate the rules of physics and time and space, and maybe the Martians can help us with that, but we're not there yet. You may have this, or you may have this. You choose. We are here to serve you. We can discuss what each one means. Let me know. A lot of times they'll come back and say, oh, right, that, okay. But then there may be times when they cannot because their world has changed and they have to change course. So you still have to have that flexibility. But just remember that as the project manager, you're in the driver's seat. Even though you're serving your client, you are the expert and you're the one to give them some direction and some guidance as to how it will work best for their lives. That's part of the service that you are offering them. Another thing that happens is you might get the Monday morning quarterbacking. As translators, you know this, that someone is going to look at your translation at some point in the world and go, oh, this is horrible French. And you think, well, now, point it out to me, let me know, show it to me. We're human, we can make mistakes. And if it truly is a mistake, we'll fix it. So be prepared for having that sort of thing happen and talk about it up front so that you can plan for it and set expectations for how that is going to work. Because sometimes it can come at you as a surprise. And again, in a project of this size and scope, that is not going to fly. You have to have a way to do this in an orderly fashion. File management in a project of this size will make you crazy. So you might want to have a sort of a file sharing system where all folks can go to their area, drop their files off, pick them up. The client can send you the files. You can send files to the client. Files will get lost in email. You can use email, but files will get lost in email. And in a project of this magnitude, you will have hundreds of emails in any 24-hour period. I promise you, you will go crazy doing that. And so you want to have a way of sharing files and getting files where they need to be in the time frame in which they need to get there. Quality is going to be a concern in a project of this size. You have 30 people, that's 30 different styles, and you can only unify them so much. Consistency might be in question. I want to say to you, I'm here to say to you, breathe deeply, swallow hard, and let it go, because it's going to happen. And again, you've got 2 months. Everybody's already stretched to the limit. Something is going to happen, but you do your best to mitigate that by having the documentation, by having the meetings, by staying in constant contact. But let not the perfect be the enemy of the good, because remember, this has to get out the door when it has to get out the door. And there are just going to be some things that are not going to be to your complete liking because we are perfectionists, but you're going to have to get over it and get over yourself and let it go through. But you can also control for that by perhaps having a segment of your team who will do that final quality check, and they'll be spot checking, they'll be reading over, they'll be tweaking format, because as we all know, nothing can ruin a perfect translation, such as hinky formatting that calls into question the document itself. So have a team who can be looking that over on the back end and unifying anything that needs unifying, spot checking, correcting, catching errors, and so on. And so in closing that part, I want to say that overall collaboration is going to be key. Patience is a virtue. You're going to have buckets of humility, because people will come at you sideways as the project manager. They will come at you sideways. You will be dealing with egos. You will be dealing with people of all walks of life, with different life experiences and the way they expect things to be. And they will come at you, and you have to remember that it's about getting this done, and keep that front and center when your patience is tried, when people insult you or they say something that rubs you the wrong way. Just put it aside, deal with it later or not, let it go, whichever it needs to be, and keep focused on the fact that this has to get done. We need to do this for the client. We have to work together. So no matter what anyone says to me, this is my objective, and forget about it. I will work with them right now, but after now, maybe I'll give them a piece of my mind or not. So that's going to be key. Many hands make light work. I strongly suggest that you get a team of project managers to help you. I work in a team, and sometimes we have big projects that we handle by ourselves. And I handled something like this, of this magnitude, and it was madness in terms of the hours that I had to put in. So get you a team and get help. Manage your clients' expectations, be very clear about the timelines with everyone, and use any tools that you have at your disposal to increase your efficiency. So these are my thoughts after the last several years in this business full-time doing this. And I would like to hear some of your thoughts on the matter. What did you think about when you were in the breakout rooms? Do we have chats? Am I seeing chats?
I haven't seen any questions yet, but
Okay, maybe
it's
we
time
explained
to.
so beautifully that there are no questions. Or maybe everyone's asleep. It's right after lunch.
No, I don't think with your anime.
Like this, and it doesn't matter what's going on. If I'm not up and talking to you,
Hi.
it will be
Somebody. Oh, excellent.
Hey.
Alejandra?
Yeah, this is Alejandra here.
Go ahead, please.
Yeah, I just wanted to mention some of the things that were discussed during the break room about the documentation that you were mentioning, that is key, you know, to mitigate, as you mentioned, and conflict or issues that may arise. So having documents up front, we identified some of the ones that you mentioned. So 4 of them we we figure would be good to have at the beginning of every project to keep consistency about conflict, mitigate risks, a glossary or terminology database or anything to that effect. And if there isn't one, create one. I guess in the process, sometimes that happens. A style guide, I think you mentioned that. A linguistic quality assurance guide. So how are we reviewers reviewing someone else's work, if there is such a thing, and how to justify them? Those guidelines are helpful, so everyone knows what to expect and how to do it, and what's the negotiation or the arrangement or agreement for that, because we normally work in pairs, right? A translator and a reviewer. And then the other one, the other linguistic asset would be the translation memories, if there is any. That helps a lot with the consistency. But then there is another aspect between all those guidelines, that is how to solve discrepancies. So how to solve the discrepancy of maybe the glossary says something, but the style guide says something else, or the translation memory has another term, and things to that effect. Having up front, we discussed, could be really helpful.
Absolutely. And yes, yes to all of the above.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
that sort of anticipated my question in part. My question would be what are the typical types of conflicts that you have confronted throughout your career, and some solutions, some examples.
So strangely enough, it's not something that happens very often, in the sense that most projects are not as long, as involved, and as fraught. And most times folks are calm and they keep it to themselves, as it were. But I have come across situations where I have been approached in a less than satisfactory manner, meaning someone they're disgruntled about something and they've written and lashed out. And that's why I said, you step back from that and you breathe and you go, you get over the part that says, how dare they? Like, who do they think they're speaking to? Like, who do they think they are? I mean, this is what happens. This is natural because we are humans and no one likes to be spoken to sideways. And so that's why I said I had to breathe deeply and I had to say, okay, the point is that we need to get this done. We're all here. We're all working. How can I work around this situation? So for instance, it could be a case where I assign a document and the translator decides, no, I will not do this document. It's beneath me. Because they look at the formatting and they decide, I don't like this formatting and I don't feel like dealing with it. Give me another document. And I'm thinking, well, these just have to be done. And I have assigned you the document based on these criteria. And could you please just do the document? No, I will not do the document. So at this point, I have two choices. I can chase them out, say, get off my team, bye. Or I can find them a different document. In a case such as this, with such a large project, with such a turnaround time, I went the road of least resistance in that I reassigned the document. And going forward, I handled that person with kid gloves. And I kept my own feeling about it at bay, because really my feeling is, this is the situation we're in. And I thought you were on board with playing on our team, and now you are acting in these ways that are not team player ways. What can I do with you? But I'm in a position where I don't have time to go get a new team member and bring them up to speed. So I have to work around that and work with that personality type, and just make sure that my communications are always in the pocket. They're always respectful and they're always factual, and they're staying with the points that need to be made. And I might push back, but it will be pushed back in a professional way.
I see a question for you, Ida. It says, how do you manage clients' conflicts and how much your translators need to know or learn about the client?
Usually it's double blind. So the translators don't know the client and the client does not know the translators. And the language service provider is the middleman who handles those two ends. There are some types of projects where the client and the translation, the vendor, the translator, the resource will be in touch because it just works better that way. But in a large project such as this, I would have them be two separate entities that near the twain shall meet, just because the one does not necessarily need to know about the other. And your question was what again?
How do you, yeah, it says how much your translators need to know or learn about the client, which you already answered, and the conflicts.
Yes. So
the client's conflicts.
They need to know enough to get the work done. And usually that is covered in the document that they actually have, because any context will come from the document. And if you need more context to assist, you get that from the client, you relay it to the translator.
I think we have time for one more question because we have to get to the next presentation. But the other question might be, how do you manage the translator and reviewers communication, or if there is any disagreement?
Yes, so in this type of project, everyone has to work together. Sometimes, most of the time when I work, the translator and the reviewer, they're doing double blind again. They don't know who the other is. But for this, there were no blinders. Everybody knew who was in the group. You may not have known who was translating or who was reviewing the document you had in front of you, but you knew who was in the group. And I, like I said, encourage people to collaborate with each other and talk to one another. And if I found it useful, I had the translator know who the reviewer was, if they or vice versa, so that they could discuss it. And conflicts, again, I've not had to mediate many conflicts between translators and reviewers. Actually, I'm yet to have to do one of those in person. I've heard of those. And most of the time, because folks they may know each other already from their community, they work things out. But if it comes to us as the LSP and we have to be the tiebreaker, then we do so. And what ends up happening is that now you just have to keep them separate if it is a case where they're just not working together. Otherwise, you do what you would do in any other situations. You get everyone on the phone and you hash it out. You talk about it and you try to put it to bed. Usually in these situations, the conflict comes from deciding what word to say. What is the word that's going to be used in this particular case? And one person wants this and one person wants that. And as translators, I don't have to tell you, we feel very strongly about our choice of words. We thought about it and we made it for a reason. In a case like that at the LSP, we would be the tiebreaker, and we would decide we're going to say it this way, the end of problem, end of story. In this instance, we are going to say it this way. And that's very helpful when you have